Hello and welcome everyone to the Jerome Foundation's 2023 Film, Video, and Digital Production Grants Information Webinar for New York City. We are joining you today from Minnesota Makoche, also called Minnesota. It's the homeland of the Dakota people. Today there are 11 tribes, including 4 Dakota and 7 Anishinaabe. Jerome Foundation honors and respects the tribal sovereignty, rights, and cultural resilience of the many Native and Indigenous peoples connected to this land, as well as the lands of the Lenape, Munsee, Canarsie, and many other tribes in what is also called New York City. I'm Eleanor Savage. I'm the program director. My pronouns are flexible. I am grayish-haired, white-skinned, Scots-Irish person with black glasses, brown sweater, and blue shirt. And I'm in a yellow room with a bunch of plants and a lot of books. And I'll pass it to Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andrea Brown. I'm the Grants and Program Administrator at Jerome. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white-skinned woman with short, dark hair, black rimmed glasses. I'm wearing a brown sweater. And behind me is a wall of bookshelves and a reading chair. And I will pass along to Laura.
Hi, everybody. My name's Laura Mimosa Montez. I'm an Associate Program Officer in Minnesota for Jerome Foundation. My pronouns are she, her. For a visual description, I am a light-skinned Puerto Rican woman with currently a flock of seagulls hairstyle. I'm in a home office space with some white walls and some text-based art. And I'll pass it over to Melissa.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Levin, also a Associate Program Officer with the Foundation based in New York City, and happy to be here with you all today. I use she, her pronouns, and for a visual description, I am a white-skinned Jewish woman of Eastern European descent. I have dark brown hair with bangs across my forehead, kind of, and pulled back into a ponytail. I'm wearing a light blue sweater, and the room I'm in is kind of a light pink lavender-ish color. There's a gray couch behind me on one side and a plant on the other. And I will pass this over to Ben.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Cameron. I'm the president of the Jerome Foundation. I'm here in the Jerome offices standing in front of Jerome's own Academy Award, which he won in 1957 for Best Documentary for a film he did on Albert Schweitzer. For a visual, I am a man with white skin, and I'm just old. I have no hair, I'm bald, I've got big bags under my eyes, I'm sort of haggard looking. I'm wearing a red shirt and a pair of blue rimmed glasses. I will drop off the visuals in just a moment because I have to drive to another meeting, so I'll be joining you by phone and listening as I drive, but I wanted to welcome all of you here today, at least visually. And back to Eleanor.
Thank you, Ben. I also want to acknowledge our ASL interpreter, Tim Smith. Thank you so much, Tim. And you'll see our other staff here on screen is our finance team, Coretta Kendricks and Kyle Roberts.
So we've got about an hour together today, and our agenda is to share a bit about our founder, Jerome Hill, and the Jerome Foundation, provide an overview of the program, reviewing the eligibility requirements, walking through the application, panelist criteria, and selection process. And we'll end with a Q&A. Your audio is muted. To participate, you'll click on the Q&A box and type in your question. And if you'd like to ask anonymously, you can check send anonymously before you ask your question.
So a bit about the foundation. The Jerome Foundation was established in 1964 by Jerome Hill, a filmmaker, composer, painter, and philanthropist. He started his career by releasing 2 short films with Warner Brothers, and as Ben mentioned, won an Academy Award in 1957. A few years later, he turned to experimental film. His works are in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art and you can view them on our website on the founder page. The foundation has awarded grants to early career artists and arts organizations for 59 years in Minnesota, Jerome Hill's home state, and in New York City, where he spent much of his creative life. 1 year after its founding in 1964, the foundation made its first grant to an individual artist, experimental filmmaker Stan Brakhage. The foundation currently funds early career film directors based in Minnesota and New York City through the film, video, and digital production programs and our Jerome Hill Artist Fellowship Program.
And I'm going to share a little bit more about our values. The values that guide our grant making are equity, diversity, innovation and risk, and humility. We center our grant making around intersectional racial equity, committing to eliminating disparities and improving access and outcomes to ensure the long-term viability of artists, culture bearers, and arts organizations in Minnesota and New York City, focusing on those whose cultural narratives and practices have been historically and presently are excluded. Our other values of diversity, innovation and risk, and humility will be discussed throughout today's presentation.
So you can find the information we're covering today in the grant guidelines, which you can download from our website. Andrea will also drop a link into the chat.
And Laura, do you want to continue and talk about the grant program?
Yeah. So this program provides grants up to $30,000 for a specific film, video, or digital production. It supports early career film directors living in New York City. We'll define what we mean by early career in a moment. We're focused on supporting film directors who are taking creative initiative and embracing their roles as part of a larger community and who work in animation, documentary, and experimental and narrative genres, or a combination. The grant covers films that will be in production between November 2023 and April 2025. Funds may be used for all stages of production, including pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution costs. One thing to note is that the program does not fund retroactively. Only costs incurred after the grant is awarded and a grant contract signed will be supported. Individuals or co-directing teams may apply. Grants are awarded only to the directors or individual members of a co-directing team, and funds will be issued only to individuals or single member LLCs. Applications may not be submitted by fiscal sponsors, production companies, multi-member LLCs, or other organizations, including nonprofits. You can also only submit one application. Co-directors submit a single application and will share the grant funds equally.
The program funds a diverse range of early career film directors, including but not limited to those of diverse cultures, races, ethnicities, genders, gender expressions, sexual identities, class, physical and mental abilities, generations, religions, countries of origin, languages, and immigration statuses, and working in a wide range of aesthetics, forms, and creative practices, lineages, and points of view. In the most recent round of the New York City Film Video Digital Production Program, which was in 2021, 246 film directors and collaborative teams of film directors applied, and we awarded 13 production grants totaling $390,000. And detailed grantee demographics are available in the guidelines.
The application is now open, and we will have a live Q&A session on March 30th for you to drop in and ask any questions you might have. The application deadline is Thursday, April 13th, and applications are due by 5 p.m. Eastern Time. You'll be notified of your status no later than October 13th, and we will publicly announce the grantees in the fall of 2023. Grantees will be able to receive funds between November 2023 and April 2025.
Okay, so moving to eligibility. When you go to the online application, you are required to take an eligibility quiz before unlocking the application. The application will also have some questions to help confirm your eligibility. This is meant to avoid an eligible artist investing valuable time and energy in completing an application. Jerome staff is also available by appointment to answer questions and help determine eligibility. Please note that if you are applying as a co-directing team, all members of the team must meet all eligibility requirements. This grant again supports early career film directors with a clear ongoing commitment to filmmaking who are residents of one of the 5 boroughs of New York City and who have been residents for at least 1 year at the time of application and plan to be residents during the span of the grant period, so through April 2025. A brief note that Jerome does not require citizenship, but does require residency and a social security number or ITIN number for tax purposes. Jerome Foundation expansively frames the early career spectrum as film directors with at least a 2-year track record of directing and presenting their own projects, so not first-time directors, and also those with no more than 10 years of experience. Age is not a factor in determining eligibility or career status. The foundation also recognizes that career paths can be nonlinear or disrupted along the way. The foundation additionally acknowledges that the number and types of opportunities afforded to directors may differ significantly based on discipline, race, ethnicity, class, gender, physical ability, and geography, among other factors. We also recognize that some directors may experience significant success and move past early career status well before their 10th year of practice. If you wish to discuss any aspect of your eligibility, you should take the eligibility quiz on Submittable and contact Jerome staff no later than March 31st, 2023 to discuss your situation.
I'll share a few more eligibility requirements. So you cannot have more than 2 feature-length films running time of 50 minutes or more that have been released, screened, and are in distribution. You also cannot be at a point in your career where you receive consistent development and production opportunities, commissions, awards, commercial success, national or regional prizes for multiple projects. In other words, you cannot be a mid-career or established film director. And in the eligibility quiz, there's a detailed listing of awards and prizes that impact eligibility for this grant.
To be eligible, you must have directed, completed, released, and screened at least 2 film projects. That can be 2 short films, 2 features, or a combination of 1 short film and 1 feature. Qualifying films are those for which you are listed in the credits as the director, and also own the copyright of the production and have artistic, budgetary, and editorial control over the film. These films must have been publicly screened and made while you were in a degree, not made while you were in a degree granting program, if that is applicable to you. The application will require you to name 2 qualifying films as described above and provide the completion date, the public screening location or platform, and links to the films. These works must be solely directed by the film director or co-directors who are applying to the grant program. Work that has been screened only through your own platforms or through not curated opportunities do not meet this specific eligibility requirements. And film directors who are entirely self-presented and who have no additional support through grants, festivals, community or public screenings, and/or competitive prizes are not eligible. In addition, ineligible films and samples include commercial or industrial work, PSAs, journalistic work, or music videos over which the film director does not have creative control. We completely understand the creative value of this work, but because of its nature, it does not provide panelists the opportunity to understand your voice and vision.
For both individual applicants and co-directing teams, you must be the director or directors of the proposed project. So again, you own the copyrights of the project have artistic, budgetary, and editorial control, and will be listed in the film credits as the director. Producers, cinematographers, screenwriters, editors, actors, or interdisciplinary artists who are not also primarily film directors are not eligible. For example, choreographers making a dance film or visual artists who incorporate video as part of an installation, technology-based projects, games, or interactive work are not eligible for this grant. Individual applicants must be the sole director of the proposed film, and films created with a co-director will not count towards eligibility and may not be used as work samples. Applicants will be required to affirm sole creation of all work samples. In the case of co-directing applicants may not include individual created films or films co-directed with other artists not included in the application to establish eligibility. Again, for those co-directing applicants, you may not submit work samples directed individually or co-directed with anyone other than the co-applicant. Applicants will be required to affirm co-creation of all work samples.
And finally, eligible applicants will create new films that are innovative and or that take creative risks in expanding, questioning, experimenting with, or reimagining artistic forms. They will have a film project in production between November 2023 and April 2025. And a reminder that funds can be used to support all stages of production, but projects that are only in pre-production during the grant period should not apply in this round. Also, projects that are primarily in post-production during the grant period will be a lower funding priority. Also, if you have received a direct grant from the Jerome Foundation, you have to have completed or be compliant on all reporting requirements. Definitely contact us if you have questions about this. And please note that the eligibility quiz will ask you about this. So if you have not received Jerome funds in the past, you will say that this question is, quote, not applicable to you. You're
Ellen, are you
muted,
muted?
Ellen.
Okay, a little bit about what is also not eligible. We don't accept applications from directors who are enrolled as a full-time, part-time, or low residency student in a degree granting education program at the time of application or during the grant period. We define enrollment in a degree program in terms of matriculation status, not contact hours. So low residency MFA students are not eligible to apply. Artists who are in an MFA or a PhD program must complete the program and have graduated prior to the application deadline and will be required to provide work samples outside of work created while in a degree program. You're not eligible to apply if you're a tenured faculty or the equivalent, or an applicant on more than one application. So you cannot apply as an individual and as part of a co-directing team or part of multiple co-directing teams.
And now I'm going to talk a little bit about eligible projects. Eligible projects include new, short, episodic, or feature-length film, video, and digital production projects, either in the genres of animation, documentary, experimental, and narrative, or in a combination of these forms. The Foundation has no preferences for subject matter or genre, and panels who review applications and recommend grants are asked to equally consider animation, documentary, experimental, and narrative work. Also, any budget size, large or small, qualifies. Applicants are expected to demonstrate their experience and capacity for the proposed story or content or form. If a project involves or focuses on specific people or communities, applicants will be asked to demonstrate the degree to which meaningful relationships with the film, subjects, and content has been developed. This program supports film directors who present work in non-traditional venues in addition to work that is screened in movie theaters, festivals, or broadcast channels, ranging from public access to screenings within specific communities, as well as films that have online distribution and presentation.
So now I'm going to talk about eligible projects and what the funds may be used for. You'll see on screen and in the guidelines some examples of the types of expenses the foundation funds related to various stages of production. The key to keep in mind is that this is a production grant. Though all stages of production are eligible for support, this grant cannot be used for solely supporting pre-production, post-production, or distribution. Again, the proposed project must be in production at some point during the grant period of November 2023 through April 2025. And the last note is that funds may not be used for study in degree granting programs or commercial or promotional productions.
The first step to apply is to make sure that you have thoroughly read the grant guidelines. You can then go to the online application. You'll first be required to complete an eligibility quiz. And if you meet the basic eligibility requirements, you'll be directed to the application. If there are questions about eligibility, you will receive a link to schedule an appointment with Jerome program staff to discuss. And remember that this discussion needs to happen no later than March 31st. If you prefer to see the application in PDF form before getting started with the online application, you can download the application guide, and there's a link to that within the grant guidelines. You may also find it useful to use additional resources. Links to those are also in the grant guidelines. We have videos with best practices for work samples and CVs. We have that live session Q&A on March 30th. You can read the frequently asked questions or contact Jerome staff. And if you have any specific concerns around online access, or if you have specific access requests, please contact me regarding an alternative means of applying, again, no later than March 31st of 2023.
About the application, after you complete the eligibility quiz, you'll go into the application. It starts with some basic questions about you and your film project. You'll also provide work samples accompanied by additional contextual and factual information, responses to questions related to the review criteria, a CV, and a budget. So now we'll go into each of these elements of the application.
Work samples are a key component of your application. All work samples, very importantly, must be work that you have conceived and generated as a director, and for which you are listed as the director in the credits of the film. We ask for Vimeo or YouTube links to the full work if possible. Trailers are not permitted. 2 required work samples must be from completed works versus rough cuts or works in progress. And you will identify 10 minutes total across both work samples for panelists to watch. A 3rd work sample is optional for those applicants who are submitting work in progress footage for the project they are applying with. If you've started production on your project, we encourage you to include a work in progress sample. And for this sample, you'll identify 3 minutes for panelists to watch. So for each sample, we ask for certain information. We ask for the Vimeo or YouTube link and a password if that's applicable. A description including the name of the work, the year it was completed, running time, and where the work has been publicly screened, any awards it has received, and any grants that the project has received, if applicable. You'll list your role or roles in the project. And again, you must be the director on all of your work samples. You may also have other roles like editor, producer, actor, etc. And you can also list these here. We ask for queue times for your work samples, keeping in mind the time limit. Context for the work sample is also, we also ask for context for your work samples. And remember that panelists who don't know you or your work will be looking at video excerpts and trying to assess the merit of your work. We give you the notes field to help panelists understand what they're looking at. You might, for example, write about how a scene you are choosing fits into the larger arc of the work, or if there are specific stylistic aspects of the work that you want panelists to pay attention to. For the work in progress work sample, you might note what work remains to be done on the project. We always encourage you to look at the guidelines for further details on eligible and ineligible types of work samples. And soon there will be a video available that walks through many tips on work samples, and you'll find a link to that on the application help page on our website, and Andrea will drop that into the chat now.
There are also other work samples that we ask for. A script sample from the proposed film is required for narrative films or hybrid films with a narrative focus. We'll ask you to upload the proposed film script as a PDF. The script excerpt allows the panel to gauge the quality of the writing and assess your ability to create character, structure, and rhythm, and other aspects as well. If you work in narrative film, but do not work from scripts and instead rely on the improvised process, we ask you to explain that process and submit an alternative to the script sample, possibly improvisational structure or an outline. That helps the panel assess your skills in directing unscripted work. You are strongly encouraged to make sure that at least one of your other work samples was developed through this improvised process. If you're still in the storyboarding phase, or a film director that works from a finished script, and you do not have the script for this film, the panel will not have enough information to consider your proposal. So we encourage applying in a future round. A concept, storyboard, or project outline may be provided for films in any genre, but is not required. You have the option to upload a storyboard, outline, lookbook, or visual concept that helps panelists gauge how you're developing the film, characters, structure, visual concepts, etc.
Another part of the application is the CV. CVs must be current and complete and clearly represent your film directing experience and any related film experience. Bios and resumes are not acceptable for this application. The CV is your chance to present your background, experience, and accomplishments to the panel. You must have a section at the top that clearly lists your directed work. Do not group your directing work with your other film experience, like your editing, acting work, etc. This should be in a separate section. You need to be specific about film, video, or digital production titles, length, year of completion, and your specific role on each film. If you are applying as a co-directing team, each individual will upload their own CV. There is currently a video available now that works through tips on organizing your film director CV, and Andrea will drop that into the chat now.
Another element of the application will be your responses to questions, both about your proposed film project as well as about you as a film director. The application is organized into sections based on the review criteria panelists use to evaluate your application. Those are artistic merit, impact, and feasibility, and we'll go into detail on these criteria in a little bit. There are suggested maximum lengths that you should abide by in these answers. This won't be enforced by Submittable because we don't want you to have to rewrite things just to save a word here or there, but you are strongly recommended to operate within these suggested lengths. While Submittable does save your work as you go along, you might also find it helpful to draft your responses in another platform like Word, Pages, or Google Docs, and then copy and paste them in. And that way you can track your word count outside of Submittable. In addition to the questions, you'll find further instructions below the text field in Submittable, so make sure to address all of the details when responding to the questions. There is one question where you have the option to respond either in writing or by uploading a video. This question is, how do you see your work as innovative, and/or what creative risks are you taking to deepen and expand film or video forms? If you choose a video response for this question, do not do an artistic video that attempts to artistically answer the question or try to squeeze in more work samples. There is no need for high production values. We are just looking for clean audio and video. And in fact, we encourage you to use your phone to make this recording. We provide the option of a video response as an alternative to the specific question, to writing, to allow you to respond in the medium in which you feel the greatest comfort in conveying to the panel a sense of who you are. Next, budget. You'll also provide a budget with this application, and we provide a sample template in the application to give you an idea of the level of detail that we're looking for and how to organize it. If you've already created a budget, you may use it as long as it includes all of the information that is on the example or template budget.
The review process. So Jerome Foundation staff first pre-screens applications to verify eligibility, relying on the eligibility quiz and eligibility confirmation questions, as well as application materials, including work samples and CV. Applications are then reviewed by an independent panel comprised of film directors and film professionals with wide-ranging experience in New York City and beyond. All panels are constructed to ensure that no single race, ethnicity, gender, or age constitutes a majority or even half of the panel. A list of past panelists for this and other programs is available on our website, and I will drop a link to that in the chat here now. Panelists identify a group of finalists to be discussed at a full-day meeting where they will arrive at a set of collective recommendations. Those recommendations are then reviewed and approved by the Jerome Foundation's Board of Directors. Feedback is only offered to finalists who have been discussed by the full panel, and finalists will be invited to set up a feedback appointment if they so choose.
So the review criteria that we use are artistic merit, engagement and or impact, and feasibility. And in addition, we prioritize supporting artists who share the foundation's core values of equity, diversity, innovation and risk, and humility. And in reaching the final roster of grantees, panelists are charged to think not only about how strongly every grantee meets each of the three criterion, but also recommending a cohort of grantees that collectively captures the diversity, one of the foundation's core values, of the larger field of film, video, and digital work. We shared the values at the beginning of the information session, and they are posted on our website and in the guidelines, and Andrea will drop a link in here. So artistic merit means different things to different people. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We provide a definition so that you and the panelists are working from the same definition. And artistic merit is evaluated in terms of the achievement as well as potential. It's the highest priority criterion and informed by our value around innovation and risk. And we support film directors engaged in creative risk-taking, again, whose work is expanding, questioning, and experimenting with or reimagining artistic forms in the ways that are described on screen here and in the guidelines. In looking at the work samples in concert with answers to the application questions, the panel will assess the alignment between the aims of the work and how that is demonstrated in the work samples. And applicants are asked to share detailed information about the project, their cinematic and aesthetic approaches to filmmaking, including the ways their work is innovative and the creative risks that they are taking.
The review criteria of engagement and/or impact is inspired by the Foundation's value around humility. The panelists want to understand why this project is important, the applicant's relationship to the subject matter, and/or the connection to the communities involved, and the desired impact of the film. Panelists assess the potential impact of the film on the director's career, as well as the director's potential impact on the larger field or community. The panel will assess whether the director has a clear idea of the community participants and or audience for the film and how to work in relationship with them from creation to completion of the project. The application questions on timelines and relevance, the applicant's self-assessment of their work, and the CV are all used to assess the value of this grant for the applicant's development and career. You're also asked to identify strengths of your work and what areas need more development to further your creative work.
And the third review criteria is feasibility. Panelists will consider applicants' planning and process for the project as a means of assessing the feasibility. Applicants are asked to share detailed information about their role in the production, the project status and timeline, the production budget, including fundraising status and contingency plans, the creative team, and any producing partners or collaborators from the community involved, if that's applicable, as well as the distribution plan and goals. Panelists will assess whether the production timeline, budget, and level of planning around logistics, including but not limited to anticipated shooting schedule, identification of a production team or collaborators, and viability of locations and the sources of additional potential and or secured funding are appropriate for the scope of the project, and if the film director and their assembled team demonstrate capacity for completing the project as proposed.
The application form itself is hopefully pretty straightforward. You'll enter in text, select options by radio button or checkbox, and upload files as needed. I just wanted to bring a couple things to your attention. The red asterisks by most fields mean that it is a required field and it needs to be completed before you can submit your application. If you're trying to submit and it's not working, I'd say 95% of the time, the issue is that there's a required field that's empty. At the very bottom of the application, you'll see the option to click the Save Draft button. And this is good if you're closing out and you want to return to the application later. You'll also see that message there saying that your application has auto-saved. And when you're ready, and definitely before that 5 p.m. Eastern time deadline on April 13th, you'll click the pink button to submit. You'll receive a success message and an email confirmation letting you know that it went through. And remember that I'm available if you have any questions or if you need any assistance with the online application and submittable. And again, those applications are due Thursday, April 13th by 5 p.m. Eastern time. Late applications will not be accepted and incomplete applications will not be considered. Once applications are submitted and the deadline closes, they may not be edited or updated. In order to troubleshoot any potential issues that might come up, internet outages or slow upload times, things like that, please try to submit your application well in advance of that deadline. We will also be in touch if there are issues with your application related to like accessing your work samples. So we ask that you please don't take any links down or change passwords for your video links, any of that until you've heard about your application status. And this will happen no later than October 13th. So I know we have some questions in the queue, but just a reminder, if you have a question you want to ask, click on the Q&A button in your menu. And remember to click the box to send anonymously if you wish to do so. And with that, I'm going to exit the screen share and we'll start answering your questions. So I have one question here. If I direct my films, but they are copyrighted by a distributor, am I eligible?
I mean, usually the distributor has distribution rights. As long as you are the director of the film and you are credited in the film, I think my one hesitation is sometimes in broadcast journalism, the company has copyrights and usually doesn't credit people as the director or the producer. So it would be helpful to have a little more conversation around this, and I would encourage setting up an eligibility call there's just so many variables that can play into that.
Can I just add one thing, Eleanor, too? I think part of that is also about the conception and execution. So questions to ask are, did you conceive of the entire idea of the project and then execute kind of all aspects of the film as the film's director? And so keep that, and were you, in control of all the creative control, decision-making control?
Yeah.
And just a quick note, if you asked a question and it doesn't necessarily get asked in this venue, that means because it's a little bit specific probably to you and your situation. And so this is one we would encourage you to make an appointment to talk to us, just to kind of chat through it. And so I'm going to, again, put the link to that appointment in the chat here. One question around timeline. If I'm going into production this summer, 2023, but then I'm expecting my post-production and distribution to happen closer to later in 2023, is my project eligible for this award?
You need to have some aspect of production happen within the grant timeline. So between November 2023 and into 2025, it needs to be in production. So if you're only doing post-production or only doing distribution, that would be a no.
Do music videos qualify if I'm the film director and had creative control?
I think the question there, the panel wants to see work that reflects the project that you're applying for. And they've shared in past panels that a music video doesn't really give them a sense of, a film director's work and the direction of their work and what they're trying to do in the project. So also, typically with music videos, you might have had creative control, but do you have the copyright for distributing the work? So in general, I would encourage you to steer away from music videos, and even if you own the copyright and eligibility is solid, it just is a very different kind of work than what this program is for.
Question about the script sample. How many pages max should the sample be?
What we generally ask is you can upload the whole of the script and then identify cue points that correspond to the sample that the video or film sample that you've provided.
Is the best way to have a question answered about the eligibility of a work sample, is the best way making an appointment?
Yes.
I would say that we're also available by email, but sometimes it's quicker to have a quick back and forth by voice than email. Does a film presented both in 2D and virtual reality format qualify? And we had another question about if a virtual reality documentary is an eligible film type.
Yes, we do support those kind of works. I think it might be worth a conversation about how to view the works. We don't have Oculus for every panelist. So that would be something to kind of think about and talk about. We've had people successfully apply that are doing that type of work, and they had a 2D way of viewing.
Is there any information available online about reporting to Jerome is like if I'm awarded a grant or funding?
Yes, we do ask for progress reports and a final report once you've concluded this particular grant. They're not beastly. We ask for a narrative to just let us know, kind of what your process was and what the status of the film is. We don't expect people to complete the film at the conclusion of the grant period. But we do ask for, notification once you have completed the film. Andrea, do you want to share any more details?
No, I think that covers it. We try to make it as minimal as we can while still getting some information. I did want to address something that's come up. It does look like during the course of our call, perhaps some of the appointments for phone calls have filled up. So we will be working on creating more appointment slots to make that more available to you. So I would imagine in the next day or two, we'll be working to make those appointments available so that if you revisit that link in the coming days, you'll have times available to sign up for. One question here, if I am credited with storyboard, design, and animation, but I'm not the director, am I eligible to apply?
No, you have to be the director to apply.
Someone else is an interdisciplinary artist. I make experimental dance films. I consider myself a film director with full ownership rights, and I've screened my films, in theaters and received funding to create these films as well. Is this eligible? Experimental dance films.
Yeah, this is something that we get a lot of questions about for this program. And if as a filmmaker, your intention is to only make dance films, so that's your kind of genre, it might be worth a call to discuss and just make sure, kind of taking a look at your CV. But in general, if you are a choreographer or a dance movement maker, and you're making films of your work, that would not be a good fit for this program.
Someone has a residency question. They would officially qualify as a one-year resident of New York City on July 1st, 2023. So before the selection and grant period, but after the deadline, would they qualify?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry, I missed the.
Yeah, so they reached their kind of one-year residency mark in New York City, July 1st. So after the deadline to apply, but before the grant period starts, does that make them ineligible?
Laura, Melissa, do you want to respond to that?
I would think they are ineligible according to what's written in the guidelines. You'd need to have 1 year of residency by the application deadline. At least 1 year of residency in New York City.
If a film was screened as part of a virtual screening during the pandemic and then placed online, does that count as being presented on a platform other than my own?
It depends on the virtual screening. If it was something that was curated and that you were invited to show your work in, or juried in some way, then yes.
In response to the question where a video response is available, but shouldn't be used as a way to get across more work samples, does this mean that it should just be a talking head video, or is it okay to be a little creative with it?
Don't be creative with it. Just a talking head, just, pick up your iPhone and answer.
Another question was, how many eligible applications did you receive last year? And then how many projects were selected?
246 applications, and we supported 13 grants.
Can a film be funded if it's already received some crowdfunding?
Yes, we are many times only one funder of many, and sometimes we're the only funder. So we support, all kind of possibilities there in terms of how the budget is being put together.
If we have 2 short films that have not been screened, are we ineligible to apply?
You're not eligible if you don't have the required 2 works that have been publicly screened.
And can you go into more detail around eligibility for folks who are early career directors, but may have experience in another field?
Melissa, are you going to answer?
Sure. I can start this one off. Yeah, so the way that the foundation defines early career is at least 2 years and no more than 10 years of generative artistic practice. And we do mean that across any fields or disciplines. So it really depends on how many years you have been a generative artist of any kind. So for example, if you have been a visual artist for 8 years and a film director for 3 years, that would be 11. But if you are still in an early stage, if you've been, a visual artist for 3 years and you're moving into film directing, and you have meet the other eligibility requirements, then you would still fall into that early career stage. So I think that's how I would answer. If you want to add anything, anyone else?
No, that's great.
Just to clarify, can we use the films in our required eligibility films as our work samples?
Yes.
And must they be used in our work samples?
No, they don't have to be used as your work samples. It's okay if they are, but we want to give you the flexibility to provide the work samples that you feel like best represent your work for this particular application. So you have flexibility there in terms of selecting your work samples.
If a film is currently going through festival submissions, by which date does it need to screen at its first festival to be considered eligible as one of those 2 required films?
Prior to the application date.
So that's the April 13th. Someone else says application requires significant time and energy. And I was wondering if you would consider releasing online the list of shortlisted applicants, not just the awarded filmmakers, as this could be helpful for people to include in their other or next applications.
We can't do that because we've set up a process and have communicated that in 2021 with that particular group of applicants and finalists. But we do have, extensive information about the artists that we have supported available on our website.
If I'm doing an episodic series, then the script sample, would that be for like one episode with important points emphasized?
Yes.
Would it need to be for the whole series?
Doesn't have to, no. No, not the whole series. but just the episode that you are choosing a work sample from. And again, as with the work samples, it needs to be just one consecutive section, not multiple, snippets within the entire whole of the work.
And just to clarify, if you are a visual artist who's been presenting work since 2004 and started making films in 2013, does that make you ineligible?
For this opportunity, it would expand beyond the 10-year point.
And just recognizing that we are reaching the end of our time together, there are some questions that were, I think, a little specific and requiring probably some of that nuanced back and forth that's able to happen in an appointment. So knowing that, we will work to make more appointment slots available, and would encourage you, if either your question wasn't answered or another question comes up for you later, to email us or to set up one of those appointments. One more question, a couple of questions that have come in, I think we'll take these. Are students that have demonstrated exceptional work eligible? This is someone asking as a professor of students who have done exceptional work.
If the students are no longer students, have graduated and have had time to complete some of their own work outside of the degree program, then they would be eligible.
And if you've taken a break off for a period of time since starting your artistic practice, so if you started in 2007, but you've taken a chunk of 7 years off of that practice, would you still be considered early career?
Possibly. I would highly encourage setting up an eligibility call and sharing your CV, and you could talk that through with the program staff here.
So I'm not seeing additional questions in the queue. Okay, one more. If I was the technical director of an immersive experience, a 5-minute piece that was presented in a museum, can this be a sample?
No, you have to be the director of the work.
And just so folks know, we will make a captioned version of this session today available on YouTube. We'll post the video to our website so you can find it if there's anything that you want to revisit in the future. And in the meantime, these next couple of days, we will be working to make more appointment slots available for folks wanting phone calls. We invite your emails as well. And one more question, are the years measured by the time we work in making films, or the year it was released? Kind of what's the start of that clock?
Really getting into the
Just
details here. We do usually start the clock at the release of your first film. Understanding that it does sometimes take quite a bit of time in the making, but we start with the release of the first film.
Can I add to that, Eleanor? Or
Yes, please do.
In the case of maybe receiving a grant or funding or award, if you've received that before the film is released, presented.
Yeah, that would, yeah. It really revolves around, when you are recognized for creating your own work.
So I would encourage, if you have questions about your timeline, if your timeline is a bit bumpy or circuitous, that's a good chance to sign up for an appointment. As part of that, we'll ask you for your CV, so we can just be in conversation with you and kind of walk through that timeline together and get a better understanding of that. So you can have some clarity for when you take that eligibility quiz.
All right. Well, we wish you the best with your application. Please let us know. Feel free to email us as well with questions, and we look forward to your application.